Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this big little guy, and that is the Cold Steel Broken Skull. Yeah, that's actually the name. Oh boy. But anyways, I do want to thank my buddy Roger for sending this along, because this is not a knife I would have I would have picked up for myself, and not something I would have probably gotten a chance to handle otherwise. So hey, thanks Roger for sending this along. Also, let's do a quick size comparison here while I'm thinking about it. Here is your Ontario rat number 1 and the rat number 2. Here is your Cold Steel Tough Light, another Cold Steel, and your Cold Steel Code 4, which is yet another one. ZT452CF, Spyderco Delica, and just to give you another comparison, this is a Spyderco Pacific Salt. So, let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Cold Steel Broken Skull. Here we go. So, on the good side, first and foremost, this is pretty slim in the pocket. You can see that it's not a thick knife at all. I mean, compared to your Rat 2, it's thinner. Compared to your Rat 1, it's way thinner. Compared to your ZT-0452, it's way, way thinner. Compared to your Spyderco Pacific, it's thinner. I mean, this is a very thin knife, and it's actually, I think, a little bit thinner than the Spyderco Delica. And that's impressive. This is very, very thin for being as big of a knife as it is. So I can appreciate that, and it makes it carry a lot easier than it would a much thicker knife. So that's good. The blade itself is pretty damn good, too, because it's XHP steel, which is a very solid steel. It's warm at the moment, so it's not cold. Okay. But XHP is good, and Cold Steel's been moving to more and more of it, and that's great, because I got no complaints about XHP, whereas Osate and some of the things they were using were less than ideal. Also, I will say that the blade is itself designed fairly well, in that you've got a nice full flat grind on it. You've got this kind of... Oh, come on now. How am I forgetting the term? Well, either way, you've got this surface here that pushes pushes whatever you're slicing away from the thumb stud, which is smart, and it's a good slicer. It's not too thick, it's not too thin. It's nicely done there. So, good blade. The construction on this guy is pretty solid, and the lockup is very secure. It's the Triad Lock, which is undoubtedly a strong lock. No concern there, and, you know, the construction on it's fine. You can push the scales together a little bit, but for anything you need to be doing, this knife is going to be just fine. Right now, I'm putting pretty significant sideways force on it against the table, and even being a big lever here, there's no concern. So it's good, it's solid, which is excellent. Not dangerous at all. Ergonomics are fine. In my small hands, it's a bit big. I do like the fact that you can choke up a little bit, and I do like the grippiness of the G10, although I'll get there again later in the ugly part. But it's nice, because it's not going anywhere from your hands. This is a very secure in the hand sort of knife because of that. So that is a nice texture, although it's got some downsides. The action on this guy, once you pop the Triad Lock out, I'll get there, is actually pretty smooth. I got no real complaints with this as a back lock. It came much, much better than, say, a Buck 110 or something like that. And then finally, this should be viewed as a really nice compact package for a very large blade. I mean, weight-wise, this is not a heavy knife. We're looking at 3.1 ounces here, as opposed to, for your Delica, 2.2. It's not a big upgrade in terms of weight. And some of the other knives in the side class, the 452 here, is 4.3 ounces. Or for the Rat 1, you're looking at 5 ounces. This is a very lightweight knife for the amount of blade you're getting. So there's your good. It's slim in the pocket. The blade is good. The steel is pretty damn good. It's secure, solidly built, decent enough action, and it's just a really great way to have a very large blade in a fairly small and carryable package. Let's jump into your bad. Okay, on the bad side, there are 5 different fonts on this blade. You got 1, 2, with the descender on the S for Steve Austin. Then you got another one here for CTS with no descender. You got the Cold Steel logotype, and then Taiwan in a smaller font altogether. Considering that there should be no fonts painted on the blade, 5 is a little bit extra excessive. All you really need to do is write Cold Steel, XHP on the side here, and you're good. That just bugged me. Strikes me as a little bad. Not a big fan of the painted blade, especially this one really picks up fingerprints like nobody's business. And they also painted the blade Tang, and that's going to wear in and not going to look stellar, so that's something to keep in mind. I'm not a big fan of the hump on the blade here. Technically, all they really needed to do was connect this point and this point with a straight line, but instead they threw in this big buoy-style hump there, and you're just adding a lot of weight and a lot of width in the pocket for no damn good reason. None of this below this point needs to really exist. So, yeah, that's no good. The fit and finish on this guy is pretty weak. The centering is not good really at all. There are gaps at the end with the G10 here. The edges on this guy are fairly sharp. Not a fan, especially for the price, which is a bit steep at 80 bucks. And part of this, honestly, is because of the way the knife looks. They have designed this knife to look like a gas station special, with the blue and the black and the broken skull and all that. And the fact that this is an $80 pocket knife with a serious steel and decent construction is kind of lost in the fact that this looks like something you buy at a gas station. So 80 bucks for this as it's currently designed is not impressing me, especially compared to some things like your Code 4 here, which is much more reasonably designed. And also it doesn't benefit well from competition. I mean, this is way more than the Delica. This is in the same price range as the Spyderco Endura, which is about the same size. I just don't see it necessarily. The knife is, well, it's using the Triad Lock, and for me, that's a bad thing. And the reason for that is the Triad Lock just inserts a stop pin between the back lock here and the, and sure, that makes the knife stronger on another dimension. But the thing is, back locks are already really strong locks. There's no real concern there. But what the Triad Lock makes you do is when you disengage this knife, you really have to pop this open a fair amount. You need to lower the back lock lever here by this much in order to unpop the knife. Compare that to your Spyderco Delica here, where all you need to do is that. So the amount of travel here is way bigger on your Triad Lock than your back lock. Sure, the Triad Lock is stronger, but the thing is you close your knife maybe 5 or 6 times a day, and so you want it to be an effective closer, and this really requires a lot of force. And you don't need strength very often, so you're sacrificing the ease of shutting this guy on a regular basis for strength that you're probably never going to need. And so that strikes me as a bad compromise. Some people will disagree, whatever. It's cold steel shtick, so okay. But not a huge fan of that. And then finally, this knife is just way too damn big. I mean, this is huge. And honestly, it's a little unwieldy, as big as it is. It's very thin, it's very long, and by the end of this blade, there's not all that much you can do with it. It's way out in the distance. So this knife at 3.5 inches, scaled down, would have been much more compelling to me. And I'd be very much happier with it as a result. So, there you go. So that's your bad. It's got too many damn fonts. The blade is painted needlessly. It's got a little extra hump on the blade that it doesn't need. Fit and finish ain't great. Price ain't great. The Triad Lock, for me, doesn't make sense. And then it's just way too damn big. Let's jump into the ugly, because there's definitely some ugly here. Okay, 3 ugly things here. First is the clip. First off, it is way too tight, and it is coupled with really grippy G10, which means it's a pain in the neck to get out of your pocket. Second issue is that it is very easy to scratch. It's painted, and so I just rubbed up against a brick wall and scratched the heck out of that. Third issue is that it came with really bad geometry. This was almost flat at the end there, which made it even harder to get into the pocket. And since the clip was scratched up already from the encounter with the brick wall, I just took my Leatherman and gave it a little tweak, and that made it better, but still. This clip is just ugly. The fact that it's painted, the fact that it's really over tight for the handle, and it's just not a great clip. That's ugly. I don't like it. They should have done better than that. Second issue I got with this knife is the branding on it is really obnoxious, and honestly, it's douche-tacular. The fact that you need to put Broken Skull, Steve Austin on the side of it. I got no beef with Steve Austin, but I don't need a pro wrestler endorsing my pocket knife choice. That doesn't make sense. And more still, the fact that it directly implies violence on the freaking blade bugs the heck out of me. Because look, sooner or later there's going to be a time where you have to explain to a scared coworker or friend or colleague or something like that why you're carrying a pocket knife. You're going to be standing in the lunchroom, opening a packet of soup with your pocket knife, and they're going to go, oh my God, that's a weapon! And you just hear the fear coming out, and you just need to calm them down. Like, no, this is a tool. I'm using this right now to open a bag of soup. Maybe later I'll use it to sharpen a pencil or cut some foam. That's not a weapon. But the thing is, if they see Broken Skull, on the side of it, they're just gonna go into freaking conniptions, because this is a weapon. You just labeled it as something that breaks skulls, and that's stupid. That's douchey. Come on, Cold Steel. This is why we can't have nice things as a knife community. Yeah, you can stab people with knives, but they're tools. You don't need to make them this, okay? Sorry. Oh, man, that was a good rant there. Speaking of rants, my final issue is that it is made by Cold Steel, and Cold Steel lately has been being really shitty to the knife community. So this right here is Sanmai Damascus. Or Sanmai pattern press steel. Sanmei, some people say. I don't know what. I don't speak Japanese. But either way, it's basically a form of pattern welding steel together in layers. Cold Steel got a trademark, which they shouldn't have applied for in the first place, because it's a freaking 100 years old Japanese term, for Sanmei 3. And then, worse still, they went around sending legal nastygrams to custom knife makers who are using Sanmai Damascus blades, not claiming they're Cold Steel Sanmai 3, but just calling the Sanmai what it is. They sent around lawyer letters bullying independent knife makers about that, and then when pressed about it, Lynn Thompson, the chair of Cold Steel, wrote this terrible letter. Oh, I respect knife makers all over the world, but, I gotta defend my intellectual property. It's not your freaking property to start with. This is a 100 years old technique. You're just the first jackass to falsely register the trademark. And he won't give it up, and so, as a result, I don't like Cold Steel because of that. They're run by a total douchebag who is legally bullying people. That's ugly. So, there's your ugly. With the knife itself, the clip is awful. The branding is just terrible. Why, Cold Steel? This is why we can't have nice things. And then finally, Cold Steel right now is acting like a bunch of douchebags. And that's not good. So I don't want to support that. But those last two things, well, the broken skull thing is on the knife. But anyways, take that for what you're worth. Sorry for the rant, but I'm passionate there. So your broken skull is a little hard to evaluate because, I've got really strong opinions about the broken skull thing and about the Cold Steel thing. But also because it's not bad. This would be very easy for me if it were just a piece of junk. If every part of this knife just needed to go away and I could just say, no, never, bad, terrible. But the thing is, it's not terrible. There's a lot of really good stuff here. It is a nice, thin knife. It's lightweight. It's a good way to get a lot of blade very quickly. There's plenty of good here. And in fact, this is the recipe for a really great knife. And it's very similar to some other really great knives. I mean, this is a Mall Ninja Buck 110, basically. And so this has a lot of potential. If they removed the obnoxious branding and maybe did a little more high quality black finish here, or God forbid actually went with metal to avoid the tactical issues, this would be fine. But, so, I mean, my final verdict here is that the price is higher than it should be, especially with the choices they made here. And especially given the build quality. But if you need 4 inches of knife in a thin and light package, this just isn't a bad choice. It's something to consider alongside things like your Spyderco Endura here, as well as your ZT452. But it's not that bad for a larger knife like that. And the Endura, by the way, although it's a little cheaper and certainly a lot less douchey, has a much lesser steel. So the Cold Steel does have some real good going for it. So, but I don't know. Where I land is you might do this. But the thing is, you have to want something that's huge, that's branded in a douchey way, that's painted, and that's sold by Lynn Thompson. And that's not what I want. If that's what you want, then okay. I guess there's some good here. I'm not going to go out of my way to recommend it, and I'm sure as heck not picking one up for myself. But I can't pan this knife. There's good here, and there's plenty of bad too. And only you're going to be able to make the decision about how much you're willing to put up with. Hope this is helpful, and that the rest of your day involves fewer rants than this video does, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day.